Good day. My name is Tim Chelpaty. I'm the president of Veterans Office Solutions. Remember, our slogan is we are the hand up, not the handout. We train and hire veterans. We're one-stop shopping, which means that their physical and mental needs are treated in one location. We pay a livable wage, which is more than minimum wage, and we help the military active personnel transition from a military life to a civilian life. Our guest is Mr. Kevin Dasing. He is the District 4 Commander for Southern New Mexico. He is the Director of Veteran Benefits at Veterans Office Solutions. He also is a VSO officer. Mr. Dasing is well versed in all veteran issues. We've conducted once before an episode addressing the Bataan Memorial Death March. Since that involves a considerable information, we will highlight it and continue where we left off. Mr. Dasing, good day to you.
Good day, sir.
And would you please tell us how the Bataan Memorial Death March has evolved over the years?
Well, originally, New Mexico State University, Army ROTC, came with the idea of the Death March. And they were going to march from New Mexico State out there around the area, and just to honor those from the real Bataan Death March. It went for a couple of years. It was great. Well, the State National Guard got involved. They wanted to be part of it, and White Sands wanted to be part of it because it was attracting people to this thing. And so what they did finally was they put it at White Sands, and they made it a 26.2 mile marathon. It is one of the marathons that if you do this one, run this one, you can be in the Boston Marathon or New York Marathon. So it's getting up there pretty prestigious now. They made it longer, and it has been becoming more and more of an item to be at. It's always in March, and it's still cool enough, but it's not that cold.
And for our viewership, Mr. Dasing, can you explain the history behind the Bataan Memorial Death March?
Well, in 1940 and 41, America was getting on an active war footing. So they needed to start drafting people and moving them out. Well, the 515th and the 200th Coastal Artillery in New Mexico got called up, and they were shipped, all 1,800 of them, to the Philippines, not knowing what was going to happen in a year. So they came to the Philippines with the rest of the Army. There was more Army personnel from around the world that was coming to the Philippines also. And they were trained the Filipino Army and just on protection, for protection of the South Pacific. Well, as we all know, December 7th, 1941, Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And on December 8th, they bombed Manila in the Philippines, and they started their invasion of the Philippines. Well, the Americans fought a brave fight. They backed up into the Bataan Peninsula and tried to fight it out with about 20,000 Americans and about 60,000 Filipino soldiers. And they did pretty good, but they were running out of ammunition, food, everything else, because America right now also had declared war on Germany, and they're sending everything to England. So that's where you get no mama, no papa, no Uncle Sam. So on April 9th, the Americans had to surrender. And so they surrendered about 20,000 Americans and 60,000 Filipinos to the Japanese. This was the worst part. The Japanese believed that a soldier, if he surrendered, he brought shame upon his family. And it was dishonorable. So you rather should die or commit suicide than surrender. So they treated the American soldiers as non-persons. They put them all together and they marched them for about 5 days on a 69-mile route to the prison camps. They broke them in little groups of 100 and just moved them out. They didn't feed them, they didn't give them no water. Some of the reports was when soldiers asked for water, the Japanese would bayonet them right there and kill them. They would take they did worse to the Filipino soldiers. They would take them out behind 300 or 400 of them and execute them right there alongside the road and continue on.
Mr. Dasing, how many Americans died in this death march?
Well, they think about 5,000. Of the 200th and the 515th, they started out with 1,800 and they ended up with 800.
And Mr. Dasing, did New Mexico have soldiers in this death march?
Yes, they did. As I stated, the 515th and the 200th Coastal Artillery, even though we're a landlocked state, we had those units here. And they're pretty prestigious. They just came out of Fort Bliss after being trained, and they were rated one of the top units in the Army. And they went over there. They didn't know what was going to happen to them. And like I said, about 800 survived.
And how many Filipino soldiers were executed in this march?
They do not know the numbers, but out of 80,000, 54,000 showed up at the prison camp after 5 days. So that's about 26,000 that were killed off.
And Mr. Dasing, are there any survivors alive today?
That is a good question. There's an organization for Bataan Death March survivors. And it's here in Las Cruces, they have a chapter. They account for who they can find. At the last Bataan Memorial Death March, they brought out 4 of them out to the finish line and let them sit down and talk to everybody coming through. They tried to bring them to this thing. We do find them ever so often. I had a group of 4 that came in from Minnesota, and we talked to them and we found out they're Bataan Death Marchers. I said, well, aren't you with the group? And they were like, what group? So they've been Bataan Death Marchers up in Minnesota thinking they're all alone. And so we married them up with these down here. And one was 100 years old. He was up there and he was still talking. That's like there's a colonel, one of the surviving colonels from Bataan Death March. He will do the honorary march here, 14 miles. He will do it every year. And he comes out with a group that support him in all this. And I'm going like, you're 100 years old. Why are you doing this? And it's for, to honor those who can't do it.
And Mr. Dasing, historically, can you explain to our viewership what happened after the Bataan Death March?
Well, after they got them to their camps, then the Japanese used them for whatever they want. If the Mitsubishi company in Korea needed people to dig coal, they put them on these ships they call hell ships. They're transports. And the Japanese didn't believe in putting red crosses on these ships. The Germans did, Americans did, everybody else did, but the Japanese would not. So a transport full of POWs would be heading towards Korea or Japan. American planes would fly over and say, hey, there's a transport. It could be filled with war materials or tanks or whatever, and they would sink it. And so we lost a lot of our POWs that way. And they were farmed out to various places, like I said, Korea and Japan, to be used as slave labor.
And Mr. Dasing, you mentioned how long the Bataan Memorial Death March is here in New Mexico. Do people normally run it or do they walk it?
Well, I used to run the finish water point at the finish line. And about 2 hours after they send the first ones off, they become running in. They would have people actually training for like the Boston Marathon, New York Marathon, and they would run this, because if they could run this, they could run those things. Because you see, the Boston, New York Marathon, it's over a road. It's a complete road, a paved, everything all the way around. This one, it's dirt. It is dirt, it's sand, it's up a mountain, down a mountain, around and all this. There's a place called the Sand Pit, which is about 1.5 miles of just so loose sand, you sink in it.
And where is this located?
What it is at White Sands, most people don't know where White Sands is, but it's stuck at the base of the mountains. And the main road that goes into it, it goes up one side through the field, then goes across Highway 70, and now you're on White Sands Missile property, goes around a big mountain out there, comes back around, then goes back underneath the bridge, and then goes on the other side of the main road going into White Sands, and goes all the way down back to the golf course.
And I would imagine that some people walk this, is that correct?
Most people walk it. They give you from about 7 in the morning to 8 at night. And even at 8 at night, a couple of times the general would just come out and say, we're staying open till the last one shows. And I've stayed there till 10:30, 11 o'clock, waiting for the last ones to show up.
How many hours would that be, Mr. Dacey?
Oh God, that's 13, 12, well no, yeah, 12, 13 hours, that would be. Because we just don't take runners or military personnel. It's open to anybody. We have wounded warriors out there that are on metallic legs doing this. We have them in wheelchairs being pushed doing this. We have military personnel, we have veterans. And some veterans are out of shape, but they will still do it. Like I said, we had a 100-year-old colonel doing it, and we have youngsters doing it. We take from all over the place. And it's not just America. We do about 20 different countries, too, that will come over and participate in this thing.
You mentioned civilian people could as well participate in this?
Yes. You don't have, there's several different groups. You have military light, military heavy. Light, whatever you want to carry. You want to carry just a canteen and stick of gum, you can do it with that. Heavy, you must have a 35-pound rucksack on yourself. And when you end the march, you better have 35 pounds in it because they weigh you. So you're carrying 35 pounds, so you have military light, military heavy. You have civilian light, civilian heavy. They're doing the same thing as the military, but they're civilians. Then you have teams, military team light, military team heavy, and civilian team light, civilian team heavy. And the only thing difference between the military and the civilians is military must wear uniforms or some part of their uniform while they're doing this, while civilians can wear whatever they want.
Mr. Dacey, you mentioned teams. How many members are there of the average team?
Usually the average team is 4 to 5 people, but we'll have 20, 30 people out of a unit will show up there. You know, some gung-ho airborne ranger unit, they'll show up there in uniform with everything on and heavy rucks, and they'll do the whole thing.
And you have mentioned how this has grown over the years. Can you explain to our viewership the numbers we're talking about?
Well, in 1989 when it started, you had about 100 so people there. And over the years, it has gained popularity. Last year, in 2019, we had 8,200 people. This year, for 2020, we had over 10,000 registered people.
Thank you for that excellent explanation. We will take a short break. We'll return and we will continue to discuss the Bataan Memorial Death March. Thank you.
If we want to improve America's healthcare system, let's start by improving the health of Americans. Despite the best doctors, hospitals, and medical advancements, Americans are not as healthy as they should be. We spend too much on treatment and not enough on wellness and prevention. We need a system based on primary care. When patients have a medical home and a long-term relationship with a doctor, the result is a longer, healthier life and reduced medical costs for everyone. Let's make America a place where health is primary.
stormed beaches and freed countries. They've raised our flag and our hope. They've been called leathernecks. They've been called devil dogs. But above all, they're called Marines.
Thank you for staying with us. My name's Tim Chelpaty. Our guest is Kevin Dacing, and the topic is the Bataan Memorial Death March. Mr. Dacing, can you please explain to our viewership how the COVID virus affected this year's march in 2020?
Well, we're all planning to have it March, as we always have the Bataan Death March, Memorial Death March in March, because it's between the cold weather and the winds and the heat, so it's always a good time. So we were getting registered. We had over 10,000 people registered, and usually a registration fee, most people don't early register, so you're paying over $100 a person to register. 1 week out from the actual march, they canceled it. They said COVID virus is out there. We've been told by the federal government and everything, you know, we need to close down, the state's closing down. So they had to stop it. And it was so far into it. They used the convention center in Las Cruces in processing, getting your packets. Also, their souvenir store, I say, was there too. And they were putting stuff up. They already had stuff. They're putting it out and everything, and then they had to cancel the whole thing.
And Mr. Dacing, can you explain the economic impact this march has on the city of Las Cruces, New Mexico?
Well, it's one of the biggest things in the area. With now with 10,000 people, and most of them from not around here, they come in and rent the hotel rooms, they eat at the restaurants, we bring a concert in for them. They stay around for a couple of days. It's a pretty big thing. It's really, for economically, it helps. It helps Las Cruces. The problem is, this close, you had people canceling airplane flights, hotel rooms. The MWR, which is Morale Welfare, on post had to reimburse over $1 million back to these people because they said they're going to reimburse them. And so that had to go all back. And we were even kidding around. I even called up the guys in charge. I said, look, your souvenir stands, that's where they make most of their money for the march, is from, you know, registration and their souvenirs. They'll sell out everything before the registration time's up because they're open for 3 days. And I said, all this stuff, they said, yeah, we have put 2020 on everything, and we had it all out there, and now we're not having to march. So we already had it made, so we got to do something with it. I said, sell it. I said, put it out there and sell it. It'd be the march that we never had, but at least you'll make some of your money. They said they don't know. I don't know if they're going to or they're going to wait till next year. But it hurt them a lot. All their people out there are volunteers. I volunteer from the DAV, and we have a water point. And there's water points every 2 miles on this whole thing that serve water. Some of them serve oranges and apples. There's a hot dog stand out there. But all of us are volunteers, and we bring everybody in. So they're not losing any money on that. But
Mr. Dacing, excuse me, this is quite an effort. Who basically organizes this march?
Well, it's done by White Sands. All the stuff out there, from tents and water points and all this, is done by Jerry at White Sands, and all the souvenirs and registration and all this is done by MWR on White Sands. The New Mexico ROTC has basically relinquished a lot of the dynamics of it because they're small. They're small and they couldn't handle all of it. But they're out there with the veterans. They still take care of the Bataan Death March veterans when they show up.
Mr. Deasing, you mentioned how many people from outside of New Mexico attend this event. How is it advertised?
Word of mouth, website, Facebook, Runner's World and all this, they do that. It's out there, but it's not out there where everybody knows it. When I came to El Paso, I was still in the military. I never heard of it until I got up here and somebody said, hey, you want to do Bataan Death March? I went, what? So it doesn't get around that much. But by word of mouth and everything, they get the people there. And they try to limit too. They try to put limits. Like first time I did this thing, it was like at 5,000. And then they try, okay, we'll do 6,000 next year, maybe 7,000, 8,000. And they were thinking about 8,000 this year and got up to 10,000. And they just said, okay, let's continue on.
And what do they have planned for the Death March next year in 2021?
They hope to have it. They hope to have it. They right now are looking through the dynamics of their losses and what they have, and can they get the people back here? Because like everything this year that has been canceled, are you going to get the people to come back next year in full force and people volunteer in full force? Or they're going to go, well, it wasn't last year and I'm going to do something else now. So they got to see, are they going to get the people back together? Do they have the money to cover their losses so they can do it next year? I'm a volunteer. I'm going to be there next year at my water point in my lawn chair because I get the ROTC from Las Cruces. They always help me. So
Now, you yourself as a volunteer, have you seen it grown over the years?
Oh yes, I have. I have seen it where you would look down the path and be, well, I used to have the finished water point all the time. So I would sit there from 6 o'clock in the morning, start putting my stuff together, and wait till 8 at night when the last one's come. And usually it used to be like 7 or 7 o'clock, they're all done. Now, there's people still out there, and we send trucks out there and golf carts and everything to find them and help them come on in. We don't pick them up. We're just like, we'll just make sure you're safe out here in the dark.
Mr. Deasing, how many members from your chapter of the DAV here in Las Cruces participate in this event?
We have various numbers. One year might be 10, next year might be 6, year after that might be 12. What I do is I augment them with the ROTC from Las Cruces High School under Major Stewart. He'll bring his boys out there and we'll have it all complete. We even have it so much that old men like me can sit in the lawn chair and go, get that done.
And what other type of volunteerism do you obtain from within the state of New Mexico?
Well, God. For volunteers for vets, I get volunteers for my vans to drive veterans to their doctors, to their clinics, to their hospital. I get volunteers for the VSO. I get volunteers to give out free dinners for Christmas and Thanksgiving to the homeless Veterans Transitional Shelter on Union Street here, and to the Pecos Apartments, and to Community of Hope, and to any other place. We got volunteers that go up to the Soldiers Home, TRC, and give TVs, and we gave them a van, and we give them gifts for their bingo and stuff. We got volunteers that go out to the Fort Baird Hospital. They have a veterans section out there, and give them drinks and food and clothing and all this.
And Mr. Deasing, what type of military disabled people do you have in this event?
Well, with the DAV, they're all disabled because you can't be a member of DAV unless you're disabled. So they're all disabled. And all the volunteers for all these other things I mentioned, they're disabled.
Do you have any veteran amputees participating in the march?
Oh, in the march? Oh, yes, yes. You have Wounded Warrior, and you have others out there that have amputated arms, legs. You know, it's just amazing when you sit out there going, oh my God, I'll never do this. 26 miles in the desert, and then you see some guy with 2 metal legs because both of them been amputated and crutches, and he's walking this whole thing. And you go, if he can do it, I think I can do it. Or see them in wheelchairs with their legs missing, being pushed. And I'm like, that has to be something for a guy to push another guy. But then I think, a veteran always backs up a veteran. He always watches over his brothers and sisters. So
Nobody's left on the field.
no one's left behind.
And is there anything else you would like to tell our viewership about the Bataan Memorial Death March?
Come on out. It's something, you're not judged at all. You do it anytime, any amount you want, or if you can't do it, you can walk off the field and go back to your car. It's a fun time. There's a lot of things out there for veterans and civilians. You can purchase the same thing. But what's interesting is when they bring those Death March veterans out. Because look at the youngest one that was out there has to be 96 years old right now. And they bring them out to the finish line. And they'll stand up and shake your hand when you come through. And they'll talk to you. And it's just a great feeling knowing that you're doing this for those guys and the ones that can't come back. And they're there for you.
That's a wonderful explanation. Thank you, Mr. Dasing. Again, we are Veterans Office Solutions. We are the helping hand. We're the hand up. We're not the hand out. We are here to train and hire veterans. Therefore, we solicit your support. Contact your senators. Contact your congressmen. If you want a Veterans Office Solutions Center in your state, please tell them to contact us. They could call us at 575-523-8500. They could ask to speak to me. I'm well versed into the subject. I'll be happy to talk to them. Thank you for your viewership. Thank you for your support. And until next time, we say good day.